Hey Kipsters, it's Mrs. Walsh. It's our last week of online learning, which is exciting because we get one more week together, but also a little bit sad because once this week is over, you guys are off to your summer break. The book that we're going to read this week for ELA is called Dinosaur Detectives. I think you guys are really going to like it. This book is all about the people who have discovered the details about dinosaurs that we've read about in our previous text. So before we start reading, we always know that good readers identify the genre and the thinking jobs for their text. I want you to press pause on the video and look closely at this page. When you're ready to see if your guess for genre and thinking jobs is correct, press play and we'll compare it with my notes. If you thought that this text was nonfiction and our thinking jobs were teach and AOT, you are exactly right. How did we know this was a nonfiction text? I wrote some of the characteristics on this slide of how I was able to figure out that it was nonfiction. This text page, this is an example from the text, has a heading. It also has illustrations, captions, and photographs. We know from our previous books about dinosaurs that there aren't a whole lot of photographs of dinosaurs, so often authors use facts and draw illustrations based on those facts. These details let me know that this text is indeed a nonfiction text, so while we're reading, we need to be thinking, what is the author teaching us and what is the author's opinion of the text? A couple more things I want to go over before we start reading. We know that this text is a nonfiction text, and a lot of the things that I described as my characteristics were some of those nonfiction text features. Authors use things like headings and captions and photographs and illustrations as a way to keep facts and information organized. While we're reading the text today, I'm going to read the main part of the text, the larger print that's in the center of the pages, but sometimes I'm also going to read what you see on the side. We would call those an insert. It's a bunch of information that is also important but is not a part of the main text. This book is pretty tall, so on some of the pages there's not an insert, but on other pages there are, just because of how I had to copy the pages to put them in the slideshow. We'll definitely read more about these inserts as we make our way through the book. We have a couple vocabulary words that are going to come up in our text today. The first word is the word distant. If something is distant, it means that it's far away in time or place. I chose this picture of an astronaut. This astronaut is distant from the spaceship at the moment and is also distant from the Earth. It's far away at the time that this picture was taken. Our second vocabulary word is the word astonishment. Astonishment means to have great surprise or amazement. The little boy in the photo is feeling astonished because you can tell by his face and by his reaction that there's been a great surprise. All right, we're going to jump into the main part of our text today. I'm always going to read the main part of the text, so the text that you see with the white background and the larger font, before I move on to reading the sidebars, those inserts we talked about, after reading the main part of the text. Dinosaur detectives. Long, long ago, people all over the world began finding huge bones buried in sand or stone. Sometimes these findings gave rise to stories about giants and dragons. Today, we know these bones belong to enormous beasts who lived millions of years ago. Some of them were land reptiles called dinosaurs. Dinosaurs walked the earth for over 160 million years. The dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. In this book, you can read about some of the people who first discovered the truth about these huge bones. Like detectives, they worked to collect evidence and put together clues. What they learned gives us a picture of life in the far distant past, when our world was the home of the dinosaurs. Now I'm going to read the information in the sidebar where you see the arrows are pointing. After I'm done reading, I'm going to ask you to think about this question, to tell me what you learned from the text features on this page. Mary Anning, one of the first fossil hunters, she discovered her first prehistoric creature when she was just 11 years old. See page 6. Gideon Mantell, This English doctor found a huge tooth. It led him on the trail of a beast he called the iguanodon. See page 14. Richard Owen. This brilliant scientist invented the word dinosaur and held a party inside a concrete model of one. See page 10. Based on what I just read from the sidebar, pause the video and tell someone who's watching the video with you, or you can make a note in the comment box. What did we learn from the information in these sidebars? The Fossil Woman. Welcome to my fossil shop. My name is Mary Anning. I've lived here in Lyme Regis all my life. I was born in 1799 above this very shop, where my father was a carpenter. For 6 days of the week, Father worked hard making furniture, but on Sundays he would take me for walks along the beach to look for fossils. What does this picture tell us about Mary Anning? We can see from the text that the author wrote this part of the text as if the author was Mary Anning, using words like I and me. The author did this to make the story more interesting. The author told us a little bit about Mary Anning, but what information can we gather from the picture? Pause the video here and think about that before moving on. He sold them to the ladies and gentlemen who come to the seaside every summer. Father taught me how to tap a rock in just the right place with a hammer to make it split open. Often there would be nothing inside it, but sometimes you would find the skeleton of a beautiful fish or a curly shell. We call the shells snake stones because they look like curled up snakes. Scientists call them ammonites. The best time to find fossils is after a storm, when the wind and waves batter and chip away at the cliffs. When a storm hits Lyme Regis, all sorts of strange creatures just fall out of the cliffs. Father said that we were fishing for curiosities. It was a bit like fishing because we never knew what we would catch, but our fish were made of stone. Before moving on, I want you to gist this page either in the comments or to someone who's watching the video with you. What is the gist of this page? Remember, gist are really short summaries of what we just learned about. Pause the video and think about your gist, and then I will share mine for you after you've thought of your own. I hope you had time to come up with a gist. My gist for this page would be, Mary looked for fossils with her father. There are a lot of really cool details on this page, like snake stones and when they go search for fossils and what it's like to search for fossils, but those are supporting details. The main point of this page is that Mary searched for fossils with her father. My poor father died in 1810 when I was just 10 years old. Mother made some money by selling fish, but it was not enough for us to live on. I knew that I had to work to help feed my family. I decided that I would spend all my time looking for curiosities to sell. One day I was looking for fossils with my brother Joseph. Walking along the beach, I looked at the cliff and saw something wonderful staring back at me. It was the skull of a strange animal. And what a skull! It must have been about 4 feet, 1 meter long, with a big round eye hole and jaws stuffed with sharp teeth. It's a sea dragon, Mary, said Joseph excitedly. We hammered at the rocks until we could free the skull. Although it was very heavy, we managed to carry it home. Joseph and I looked at pictures of animals in a book to see if we could discover what it was. We decided that it must be a crocodile. I'm going to read the sidebar on this page. Fishing. Many people in Lyme Regis made their living from fishing in the sea. Tools. Mary used simple tools like this hammer and chisel to split open rocks and chip out fossils. What does this picture tell us about Mary Anning? Thinking about the information on the page and then what I see in the picture, it gives me a better idea about how Mary and her brother Joseph actually found fossils that they were looking for. I had a hard time imagining what it would be like to watch someone go fossil hunting, and this illustration really helped me better understand. I was sure that the rest of the crocodile was still there, buried in the cliff. All I had to do was wait for another rock slide. So after every storm, I would go back to the spot where we found the skull. hoping to find the rest of the skeleton. It was almost a year later, in 1812, that the rocks finally fell away. There was my creature, but it wasn't a crocodile. Instead of legs, this animal had short paddles. It looked more like a fish. I chipped the skeleton free with my hammer, and we carried it carefully back to our shop. News quickly spread that the Annings had found a sea dragon. Everyone wanted to have a look, and we were able to charge visitors some money to see it. Then we sold the skeleton to a local nobleman for 23, I'm not sure what that amount is, but in England, they use a different kind of currency, so it was 23 of something, which is more money than I'd ever seen before. At this time, I met my first geologist, scientific gentleman who came to see the creature and argue about what it was. One of these geologists, Mr. Koenig, gave my creature a name, the Ichthyosaurus. If you look over in the sidebar, it gives you a little bit more information and also shows you an illustration of what they think the Ichthyosaurus probably looked like. When I was 22, I found an even stranger creature in the cliffs. It had a tiny head, an amazingly long neck, and 4 flippers. It took me months to chip it free from the rocks, but it was time well spent. I was able to sell it to the Duke of Buckingham for 100 English currency. I showed the skeleton to a geologist called Mr. Conybeare, who visited me. His mouth dropped open in astonishment. I have never seen anything like this before, he said. It has the head of a turtle and the paddles of a whale, but its neck is like a giant snake. I shall call it Plesiosaurus, which means almost a reptile. Plesiosaurus made me famous, although some geologists accused me of having created a fake fossil to make money. Then last year, I discovered a reptile with wings. A fossil expert called Professor Buckland and named it Pterodactylus macronix. He said that the poor beast must have drowned in the sea. Of course, finds such as these are very rare. Mostly, I live by selling ammonites. Would you like to buy one? Over in the sidebar, they show you an example of what the Ichthyosaurus and the Plesiosaurus might have looked like. And they also explain how much money it was that the Duke of Buckingham bought one of her fossils from Mary for. So when you think about the amount of money that was spent, it tells us in the sidebar that it was a huge sum of money, and that a lot of people would be lucky to live on one of the English currencies in a week. So when you think about having 100 of those, that was a lot of money for Mary and for her family. I want you to take a second and pause the video and think about the gist of these pages. When you're ready to hear my gist, you can unpause, and then we'll wrap up the lesson for the day. When I think about the gist of this page gives us more information about other discoveries that Mary Anning made. So my gist would be, Anning continued to find fossils and sold them. If I want to know more details about what fossils she found, or who she sold them to, or for how much money, those would be supporting details that I could find back in the text. This is all we have time to read today, but I want to make sure that you watch Wednesday's video as Miss Rondo is reading the next part of the text. She's going to read another section that has to do with another person who went on fossil finding expeditions, and we're going to learn about new species of dinosaurs that were found. Make sure you watch her video. See you guys soon.